Hello, 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 everybody on Facebook and YouTube. We are going to get started in just a second. You know, when you're doing these live streams, I got to make sure all the stuff is working. I don't have a crew, it's just me. But thank you to everybody for tuning in to What's Good with Ebony Chappelle. I'm your host, Ebony Chappelle. And this is a program about people doing good things and things that make us feel good. And tonight, what is making me feel good and feel so excited is Juneteenth 2021. I can't tell you guys how excited I am. I am not a person that grew up learning about Juneteenth. I don't think I knew it existed until I was deep in high school. And I found out that there was, a such thing, as Juneteenth, but it wasn't something that was widely celebrated in my immediate community. But as the years went on, I started to see more and more attention being paid to it here in Indianapolis. So tonight, I'm so excited that I'm talking to a whole swath of folks that are doing events for Juneteenth right here in our very own city. So I want to introduce them in just a second. But for those of you that are tuning in, jump into the comments. Tell us what is making you feel good today and what brings you to the conversation this evening. I will be putting up some comments on the chat, not on the chat, excuse me, on the live stream. So if you have questions and things this evening for our guests, be sure to drop those questions and we'll get them answered. So without further ado, I'm going to bring some people to the stage for us to jump into this conversation about all things Juneteenth right here in the city of Indianapolis. Hello, everybody. How are y'all doing this evening? What's good?
It's all you.
So before we jump into the conversation, I do want to go around and a few people just share with me what's good for you today. What's going on? Don't be shy.
Hey, almost Friday. Just feeling good. I mean, I'm blessed to be amongst beautiful Black people right here. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'd say what's good with me is that I have a strong group of people. I always say it's not a me, it's a we. So I have a strong group of people on my team hold me down as we get closer and closer to Juneteenth.
That is amazing.
We cleared the building inspection, so that's why Rose not on the call. She's actually busy with the move-in for the bookstore.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're going to hear all about that in just a second. Joshua, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you. So let's jump into it. Let's do some introductions. James Indy Juneteenth Inc. Webb. Long name. Tell us about yourself and what gets you involved in Juneteenth, what you're bringing to the table this year.
Hey. Well, I'm James Webb. I'm second half I'm a co-founder of Indy Juneteenth. My wife, Tawana Webb, is also a founder of Indy Juneteenth. And as Brother TJ Rice said, we have a strong team with us, and I'm thankful for them too. But we're bringing back again our festival. We're bringing back. We brought for the first time the Miss Indy Juneteenth Scholarship Pageant. We're bringing a parade, and we're bringing love. Really, man. We're enjoying the all the celebrations that we're seeing. Under no circumstances will we ever complain about Black people getting together doing anything positive. So we're just happy to be here. So we're bringing our festival to Riverside Park. Begins at 10 a.m. on Saturday at Juneteenth, and we'll be rocking till about 6 or 7 o'clock, man. Hopefully everybody can, if they can make ours, come on out.
Awesome. Sleepy, what about you? Oh, you're mute. Oh, we can't hear you, bro.
My apologies.
How about That's okay.
I had the earbuds in. Okay. But my name is Richard Sleepy Floyd. I'm a drummer and producer here in Indianapolis. And, I'm most notably known for my band Native Son. But, what I have in store for Juneteenth, and I felt the need to, was I've secured 2 shows at the Jazz Kitchen. June 18th and 19th. One show starting, first show at 7:30, the second being at 10 p.m. On both the 18th and 19th. I believe tickets are yet available, but also moving fast. So after you check out Brother James and all the other beautiful events going on, just come on over to the kitchen for dinner.
We'll be there.
Let's keep the party moving with some of Indy's best. I'm not gonna get into the details, but I don't want to, take up too much time at the moment.
Yeah, appreciate you, Sleepy. Victoria, what about you?
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm the Executive Director of Growing Places Indy, and I'm representing the Indy Night Market. The Indy Night Market is a food festival / farmers market, which happens at night from 6 to 10. And we're kicking it off on Juneteenth. It's a celebration of food, celebrating Black chefs, Black restaurants, and just the diverse food scene we here have in Indy. So we're excited about launching the first one on Juneteenth and celebrating all things food and celebrating Black people.
Wonderful, wonderful. Susan Hall Dotson, introduce yourself to the people.
Good evening, everybody. Susan Hall Dotson from the Indiana Historical Society. All day, every day, all things Black history. From the library to exhibits, presentations. Come see us. We've been open since last summer, so we are open now. So come out and see us. Right now is prime for the picking. We have 3 exhibits, well, actually 4, that feature histories and images and stories about African Americans. That may not always be the case as we turn over exhibits, but right now it is robust. From Madam Walker, which is just all about Madam Walker and her life in India as well as elsewhere, to our role in the bicentennial for 200 years in Indianapolis, to a new Title IX exhibit and the phenomenal legislator and women from around the country, not just in Indiana, who helped to make that possible. And if you like music, Jeanette Records, we got a lot going on right now.
Absolutely. Brandon Cosby.
Hello. I'm Brandon Cosby. I'm the executive director at Flanner House, and this is our 3rd Juneteenth celebration. This was really special because it's 2 years ago we opened Cleo's on Juneteenth, Cleo's Bodega and Cafe. And this year we're ribbon cutting the grand opening and the celebration of Ujama Community Bookstore, which is a bookstore that's principled on the Swahili principle of shared and cooperative economics that will be located in the space at Flanner House that used to be occupied by the library. So it's a doubly special day for us to celebrate the 2-year anniversary of Cleo's and to be able to invite everybody in to see the bookstore that we've been working on.
Wonderful. Joshua said Cleo's is the neighborhood spot. It definitely is. Grateful that it's there. TJ, what about you? What do you have going on?
Too much, but good evening, folks. I'm TJ Wright, and I am the founder and managing partner of Juneteenth Social. Juneteenth Social is fairly new to the city, starting in 2019. And we exist to create social capitals for Indiana's and central Indiana's, but of course, all of Indiana's Black professionals. We invite folks who are creatives, innovators, gatekeepers, organizers, C-suite level executives, all in one space where we can celebrate each other, celebrate how far we've come, and also build a social capital. We believe that networking doesn't have to be a space that is tight-lipped or representative of what, frankly, the white folks consider networking. We can make it, and we can make it an experience just for us, and that's exactly what we do at Juneteenth Social.
Wonderful, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Dr. James Anike, thank you for joining us just now. Tell us a little bit about what you have going on for Juneteenth. You're still mute. You're mute. There you go.
Oh, we went back on mute.
Oh, you're mute again.
Okay, it did it on its own
There
somehow
you
that time.
are. There you.
All right, great. Good evening. As you said, Sister Ebony, I'm pastor, Scotch United Methodist Church, Dr. James and EK. Also host of a radio program called Soul Liberation Radio, and the author of a book. I'm actually the author of 7 books, but the one that's most germane to our conversation is one called African American Holiday, which does a couple of things. One, it shows our key African American celebrations, and then the other thing that it does is show how to celebrate those holidays. And the book has been out for, I'm going to say 30 years or close to it, and been revised a few times, and still catches the interest of our people, and is still being used around the country and even beyond to help us celebrate our holidays. So at Scott Church, and this is I'm entering my 14th year as pastor of Scott Church. And we have, over that time, always made cultural celebrations an important part of what we do. So this will be our, probably our 13th celebration of Juneteenth. And so that's what we got going on. This coming Sunday, 2 o'clock, at Scott United Methodist Church, 2153 Dr. Andrew J. Brown. And it'll go from about 2 to 5:30, and we have a whole lot of wonderful things going on with vendors, and several poets will be sharing, and then we have several people who will be providing proclamations. Just the same as there were proclamations given to announce the liberation of Black people, legal freedom of Black people back in the 1860s. We'll be doing proclamations of freedom from alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, proclamations of freedom from fear, and several other subjects we'll be dealing with.
Great. Thank you for joining us. So now I want to open it up to conversation. I want everybody to jump in. But first, I want to start with you, Susan, from the historical perspective. I shared before we got started, before I brought everybody on the screen, that growing up, I didn't learn about Juneteenth. I didn't know that was even a thing until much, much later. I think I was like a senior in high school, or maybe even a freshman in college at that point. And it wasn't anything that was widely celebrated in my immediate community. So there was just a lot of ignorance there and a lot of unawareness. For people that are just now starting to learn about this, what is a brief history that you can share about why we celebrate Juneteenth?
Well, you are not alone in not celebrating or even being fully aware of what Juneteenth was, for a lot of reasons. Juneteenth, in and of itself, the act of freeing the enslaved, wasn't for Blacks all throughout the country. It was only for the 9 slave-bearing states anyway. So those who were enslaved elsewhere, it didn't mean for them, number one. Number two, there had been slaves all over the country from sea to shining sea, and that slipped through and around all types of legislation that were enacted. So say in Indiana, for example, when it was settled as a state, became a state, it was voted by the small margin to be a non-slave holding state. But there were already slaves people holding people captive in bondage in Indiana. So becoming a non-slave state didn't mean you had to get rid of your slaves. It just meant that this was not a slave trading state. And so people still had slaves, and they changed they became, life indentured and whatever. There was all kind of loopholes to get around that, number one. So to break this down in a really short thing, in 1865 or 1863, from the Emancipation Proclamation to 1865, that only had to do, there was a lot of people affected by that, but it didn't free everybody else, quite frankly. Whatever status you had was the status you had. So to deal with Indiana, I grew up on the East Coast. I heard of it, but it wasn't really relevant to people getting freed or getting more rights. It had really nothing, sadly, to do with that. But in Indiana, so as a non-slave state, but in 1851, Article 13, I will read it verbatim. No Negro or mulatto shall enter into this or settle in the state after the adoption of this Constitution. So that meant no Black folks could come here. Those who are already here needed to register. So those of you who have not been, and you can look at, some of them are online, you can come to IHS in the library. Coy Robbins did this really great survey where Black folks had to register and had sponsors, and the registers are there. They're in county archives. And if you go to Shadeland, to the state library, I've held them in my hand, like from Vigo County, and it would say M or B or N, depending on who was recording the person's name, their age, children that had to register that were already within the state. There are a couple of cases where a man brought a woman to be his wife from Kentucky. It was found out that he had a wife that came from out of state. They null and voided his marriage and sent her back. This stayed on the books right here in 1851. Black people were not welcome in the state. So with Juneteenth, this did not get repealed until 1867 in Indiana. And then it wasn't all of the rest of the articles that disenfranchised African Americans, Black folks in Indiana did not come off the books until 1881. So if that gives you a sense of why we don't know, why it's important to what happens here, but it's not relevant in the exact language of freeing slaves, because it was the 9 slave-bearing states, slave-holding states, if you will. And another reason why you and many of us did not celebrate it as a bigger event, it was not recognized even in Texas as a state holiday until 1980. So even Texas, where Galveston was, people were celebrating this from day one. People were celebrating the moment they found out. And there have been lots of different celebrations across the country, but 1980 is a noted state with language and legislation didn't happen until 1980. And Indiana did not recognize it as a holiday until last year.
Wow.
So just, and Juneteenth is one way to put it, but for many, many decades, people were also calling it Emancipation Day and not Juneteenth either. So they're synonymous, but depends on where you are and who you talk to. And then a lot of people didn't want to remember. They did not want to celebrate that either. It depends on which lens and perspective. It's not always something that people want to celebrate. They would rather forget. They've moved on. That is in the past. That is behind us. But it didn't actually free everybody. And we could be here till tomorrow talking about who stayed behind, who was forced to stay behind, and what happened thereafter with sharecropping and peonage and slavery by another name. And it goes on and on and on. So there are a lot more reasons that we don't all embrace it. But we are almost, I think it's about 40, maybe 46 states that are recognizing it in some way as a state holiday, and maybe not a day that you get off and all the other things, but at least recognizing Juneteenth as a day. So almost at 50 in the District of Columbia. We'll see.
Yeah. I want everybody else to jump in on this that has thoughts, comments. A quick question from Natalie is, was there a cost associated with registration in 1851?
Yes. And okay. I think it depended on what county possibly, but in some cases, and the same was said, it was true in Ohio, it could be upwards of $500. And the registration was like a bond, so that you would not become a vagrant, a burden on the state. So whether they paid it or someone else, their employer, But yes, there were fees associated with that too.
Wow. Any other thoughts on this? Jump in, y'all.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's
Yes.
wild. But it's also true that I believe August 8th was the Independence Day in 1865 for the state of Kentucky. And then slavery wasn't even off the books in Mississippi until like 2003. So everything Ms. Dotson said is just mind blowing. But even to think of the 13th Amendment and how that still grants slavery and under certain circumstances is still something that's just mind blowing. And in my opinion, even more reason why we all should celebrate Juneteenth even stronger, to promote the love and to promote the freedom until these type of things change.
And that's exactly my perspective, brother. Like, I just acknowledge, definitely commemorate the day for what it is, but also understand that the work remains, and that we just have to be a part of solutions, and just understand that we're not at the finish line. So that's a big reason why I'm doing, expressing myself and celebrating and commemorating the day the best way I know how, and that's through music.
Another thing I'd like to do in observing Juneteenth is to look at it from the perspective of those who were freed. And I use the word freed loosely because it was basically legal emancipation, but not necessarily freedom. There's a difference. And so for our ancestors, when they received the word, or when Union forces got to the different destinations and was able to enforce either the Emancipation Proclamation or the 13th Amendment, they celebrated. I mean, the celebration was off the chain. They would celebrate in some case for weeks, just celebrating the fact that this freedom that they had dreamed about was finally here, imperfect though it was. And when you think about how they celebrated, for me, I can't help but celebrate also. So Juneteenth then is the oldest African-American holiday. And as my brother just said a moment ago, it's a good foundation, I think, to move on to other levels of freedom in so many different areas. And if we look at it from that perspective, then we can appreciate it, I think, a little bit more.
Absolutely. TJ, Victoria, Brandon, I want to hear from you guys. What was it that brought Juneteenth into your life? Was it something that you always knew about, you grew up with, or when did that moment happen for you?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. I actually learned about Juneteenth 2 years ago. So I had no idea. And so I was just shocked about how much I did not know about this holiday. So, about the work that I do today and the work that I continue to do and the work that I want to do is so much more important because there's so much we don't know, but there's so much to celebrate. And so that's why this holiday this year is even more important for me to celebrate and continue to celebrate, because I had no idea. And so I try to do as much work on my own to learn as much as I can about the history, because I don't ever want to forget. I want to know as much as possible, because I feel like that's part of my purpose too, is to be able to learn that and teach other people and teach my nieces and nephews and things that they won't be able to learn in school. So, and my kids. And so it also makes me appreciate being a Black woman and the work that I'm doing every day. So, so I'm excited about all the events, like especially being in Indiana, being from Indianapolis. It's exciting to see all these Black people, and celebrating a holiday like this is even more important.
Yeah, for me growing up, I'd never heard the term Juneteenth. My grandmother would always talk about jubilation and that celebration and what that meant. And it wasn't until I actually started interning with the late Gilbert Taylor and Pat Payne, when we were cataloging everything for the Addicts Museum, that those two were the ones that really schooled me on Juneteenth and what it meant and what it could possibly look like. And so I've always carried that forward in ways of trying to create, ways of celebrating us, but also what that continued work of, that the idea that there were those of us who were enslaved, even though legally it had been outlawed. But they kept that information from us to keep us, oppressed to keep us, one more planting season or one more harvest season. And to really then kind of carry that forward and how many different ways do we still find some of our people enslaved, whether that's physically or intellectually, and what the work continues on that front for liberation, and then leading to another layer of jubilation after that.
I'd like to add to that. There's another way that many of us knew about this, even when we didn't realize that we did. Those of you who have ever gone to or heard of Watch Night services for New Year. Watch Night service was about just that, waiting for the Emancipation Proclamation to be read, and those that were enslaved and those who were their owners, if you will, were waiting for this announcement to come. And that tradition, I didn't even know what that was for a long time as a young person. And I grew up a combination of Baptists and Presbyterians. Presbyterians did not do Watch Night. Okay, that was not a thing. But most people who do it now don't even know why they do it. They think they're watching for the coming of the new year and do it in church, and the blessings that will be extended from prayer and to God and the rest was not the origins in and of itself. It was really waiting for the deliverance of God from bondage. And that has gone on without necessarily always being explained, why we do what we do. So I forgot about that as a thing that we have collectively as a greater community. It is around and it's there, and we don't always know what the basis is for it.
I definitely echo that. That was absolutely my experience growing up. Juneteenth was something that was very fleeting. Interesting enough, I grew up in the holidays of Kwanzaa. My family was very deep into that, but Juneteenth wasn't something that we were quite familiar with. So I really didn't know about Juneteenth, until, I'm gonna just be honest with you, an episode of Being Mary Jane. And you see, look at everybody, whoa, we haven't seen that in a long time. Yes, it was a little bit. It was that. And I was like, Juneteenth, is this like some Atlanta stuff? Do I need to look this up? And come to find out, it was all this information, all this history. And as sometimes a HR nerd and a people nerd, I like to look at how people are living and understanding and communicating. I couldn't put it down. I had to keep digging. And when it comes to bringing it to Indianapolis, it was really a matter of, at the time when we had founded Juneteenth Social, it was still very new. It was in 2019, and we spent half of our time explaining what Juneteenth was, to give you some context on how new it was. And I think some other folks I think James could also attest to that. That was half the battle. But once we did, we saw that the pride was unmatched, and we decided that we would tie that into the work that we want to see and the change that we want to see in workforce development. Speaking to some of the things we talked about of how slavery is showing up in our modern day, a great deal. I think any Black person who has worked in the workforce for one day can tell you that the workforce is the primary place where slavery continues to exist. And so for Juneteenth Social, we're talking about building social capital. We're talking about breaking those chains so that we could build generational wealth, so that we can build new economic and pathways and ecosystems that exist and thrive on the Black dollar. Because as we all know on this phone call, the Black dollar is the strongest dollar out there, no matter how green it is.
I agree that Black dollar is real. But to piggyback on what you were saying, we started Indie Juneteenth in 2016, and we're not from Indianapolis, my wife and I. So we came down here maybe about 8-10 years before that, and we would talk about Juneteenth with people, and we wouldn't see it anywhere. We would see it in smaller places like that. And so we said, Yeah, let's try to create something. Let's try to create an umbrella that other people can get up under and celebrate and glorify this beautiful day. And as Brother Wright explained, it became like it's not a day goes by in the summertime that someone doesn't tell me, "Hey man, you taught me what Juneteenth was, brother. I really appreciate that," and that just brightens my day. Because at Indy Juneteenth, our main thing is education. My wife is an educator. I've been an educator. And all we do is educate on history, educate our youth on pride and loving themselves and things like that. So it became like the highlight of my day to sit back and say, "Yep, we got a flag. We got a whole day to celebrate. We got this, we got that." And you could just watch their faces just like, "Oh my goodness, are you serious? You lying, brother?" I'm like, "No, I'm telling the truth." Like a local comedian named Justin Bland, he hosted a class for me to teach last year. And I taught the class, and everybody was just like, "Oh my goodness, we got red velvet cake. We invented that." Like, "Oh my goodness." And it was just powerful. I mean, to understand how amazing and how deep in texture our culture really is something beautiful. And even if it isn't Juneteenth, it's still something that should be celebrated. Like Sister Susan Hall Dawson said, Black history every day, all day. I mean, it's just beautiful.
It is. It's very beautiful.
Facts.
And you know what? Thank you, Eunice, for joining the chat. Dr. Anike, you mentioned that at Scott, you guys have been doing Juneteenth for 13 years. Really quickly, when you were doing that, how many other Juneteenth celebrations were going on in the city at the time when you started?
That's a good question. I can't recall any others off the top of my head.
Okay.
And let me also say something from a historical perspective. My first introduction to Juneteenth was probably more than 30-something years ago in Chicago. We had a regular Juneteenth celebration. We called it June. And some of you may know the name Lou Palmer, who is a well-known figure in both politics and media in Chicago. Lou Palmer led that effort. And so Chicago knew Juneteenth for I'm sure more than 40 years. And yeah, it's new to a lot of folk, but yet still the oldest celebration.
Yeah. And I asked you that to illustrate a point. So 13 years ago, you had what you were going on. You don't really recall very much else going on. When I started getting involved, I recalled the Idle Jorg would do a little something on that day. They would have different things going on around that day. But now I'm sitting on here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people in the city who have things going on. And this isn't even everybody. There is so much happening. I'm excited. I'm also going to be very tired that day because I'm going to try to do a marathon run around every place that I can go. I also created a graphic that I'm going to be posting on social media with all the events that people told me about. It's not everything, but it's what people told me about. So folks can, use that as a guide, hopefully, to open up their minds. So that's one side of it. But another thing that I've, heard from people is, why are there so many events? Why is there so much going on? So I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on the fact that there are so many events going on? I mean, some of y'all events are even around the same time. Like there's some overlap. What are your thoughts on that? Any feedback on that point of conversation?
If we added another 20 events, that wouldn't be enough.
That sums it up right there.
Yeah. Especially after the hellish year that we've had, the hellish existence that we've had in this country.
Absolutely.
I feel you. Yeah, absolutely.
I often hear a lot of people say there's not enough events for Black people to do. There's not enough things to do for us. So I love that it's too many. There's plenty of things to do that day. So, and I will hopefully will continue to do things so Black people can stay here and enjoy and be social. I'll be honest, I often think about why do I still live in Indianapolis? Because socially, it's not a lot to do. And that's why I created the night market and a lot of other things that I plan to create, because I want to be able to have safe spaces for Black people to enjoy themselves and have fun and come together. So I love that it's a lot of events. It's funny that people are saying it's too many when we don't actually have enough stuff to do. So I'm excited about all of these events.
I wouldn't be me if I wouldn't have said, that's one of my mentors, Tammy Cooper. Juneteenth 365 is what we say. But I might say this wrong, but I do that sometimes and I don't mean to. But it's funny how a holiday was barely celebrated 2 years ago, and now we're bringing in so much light and love, and people are already complaining. Like I just find that counterproductive. You know, and I hope that's not coming off offensive. It's just, why should we ever complain about Black people in unity, bringing light and bringing love to the culture? I just don't identify with that. I'm all about peace and prosperity and equality for all people of all genres and sexualities, orientations, and complexions and everything, man. Like, why is this a problem? You know, last weekend there were murders and shootings and all type of things happening. There's a weekend where we're bringing nothing but love, and it's still a problem. That's an attitude as a culture that we have to go away from. That might be another conversation I'm bringing up for another event, but I didn't have a problem with seeing all of the events, because a lot of my people who have my back have been defending me in these conversations, and I had to text them like, no, man, that's beautiful what they're doing over there.
Well, and I mean, exactly. And the bottom line is that we're not a monolithic people, right? Like one celebration ain't enough to express all that we are, right? So as many different ways and as many different places, you know, my driving philosophy around Juneteenth and always trying to do these major rollouts of economic initiatives for us is that I want the celebration on Juneteenth. But when you wake up on Tuesday and you're still Black, that there's a place where you can come and exist in all of your Blackness that was created for you. And so, you know, the more celebrations there are, the number of different ways that those celebrations manifest themselves is just a reflection on like the impact of the African diaspora across our culture. And so there should be several celebrations in order to be able to get at how diverse we are.
And to piggyback off of all that, I'd say, look at the people who are on this call. We are all, we came to this call and we came building these programs that are tackling different areas. When people are discussing, why are there so many? I respond with, because there are so many different areas where Black people excel. There are so many different areas where Black people should be celebrated. When we look at the economic state in which we exist, we can't talk about issues in education without talking about food justice. We can't talk about food justice without talking about where the food exists and what type of food they're eating and all these different pieces that all funnel together. We can't talk about food justice without talking about redlining and criminal justice. All of these things are important, and all of these things deserve attention. So when we're looking for things to do, when we are celebrating each other, it is never a question for me is there enough celebration? Because we have been in this country for 500 years, and I can tell you, but we haven't been celebrating nearly enough. And we will need to go 500 years more before we're celebrated to even a small percentage, if you're asking me, of what we've deserved.
Right. I'll just sum it up by saying that, you know, we can't celebrate enough. So, you know, we should have, like Brother James said, we should at least 10 or 12 more events. I don't care, you know. And I'm just going to try to make it to as many as I can before I have to be over at mine that evening. So, yeah.
Well, I'll throw out a new one for maybe all of you or none of you at this point. But I grew up in the 60s, in the 70s, and we celebrated, and we got off from school that day, Black Solidarity Day. So I challenge you to take a dive. I just pulled it up on Wiki, so there is something else out there. A friend of mine who's newly retiring, I guess, from the commissioner of New York City Parks, created a pop-up park and put benches and stuff that's named after the holiday. So when we were kids, it's in November. We would get off from school and we would talk about Pan-Africanism, how to create Black wealth. And I mean, I was, what, first grade, second grade. But for a couple of years thereafter, I don't know why it stopped. But that was, and it was a day after Election Day. So I guess it wasn't always the same day. So I just remember
it's the Monday before election day.
Election day. So we would get off from school 2 days. But but I remember one year making dashikis in school. And I went to, at that point, it was up, I would say it was predominantly Black, but it was a diverse school.
Where you from again? I'm sorry.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
So, you know, and over the years, I just remember it just fell to the wayside and waned. And I think about it every now and again until Mitchell Silver, the outgoing commissioner of parks last year, dedicated a park to Black Solidarity Day, and some other Black individuals and people in New York City. So he did a throwback to something that's been long, long gone, as we keep talking about what do we do? So, and that then was about Pan-Africanism and wealth building and inequality, and not directly tied to our freedom from enslavement. Because as Brandon said, and others have said, we are not a monolith. Our stories are not all the same. You know, there are people who are generationally born free, if you will, particularly on the East Coast, who were not enslaved in the traditional sense, because I took it from social media. I don't know who made it up, but I like it. Free-ish since 1865. So there's still all these visible and invisible shackles that are around for us to keep breaking, and for them to keep trying to put back on us in some form, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, that we have to overcome every day.
Can I tell you my favorite, besides free-ish, my favorite is America, home of the land. Some terms and conditions may apply.
No, and that's real. That's real. You know, I think a lot about, you know, what we went through collectively in 2020, what we're still living through right now. And, you know, COVID dealt, you know, such a blow to us. The uprisings, I think, was, for me, even though that was the most challenging piece of the year, really helped to ignite a new fire in me for what the future means for us as a people. And I think the future for Black people, you know, Black people are the future. We are in the future. We have the technology within our DNA, like, to be whatever. But it reignited another fire in me to think about, like, what sustainability means going forward. And I think sustainability means us being together and working together and communing together and supporting one another at all times. And, you know, I know we're all talking about Juneteenth right now. You all have some fabulous events. I encourage you to put all that info in the comment section so people can see it and share and like and attend and all of that. But what do we do for Black people throughout the rest of the year? You know, you guys earlier said Juneteenth 365. What's going on? What are some resources or initiatives or programs that you have going on, or other tips you will have for how we support Black people throughout the remainder of the year past this amazing holiday?
Well, within Juneteenth, we do a lot of food drives throughout the year. We do a lot of clothing drives, we do a back to school drive, and we do educational trips. And we had to postpone our trip to the Muhammad Ali Center because of COVID, but we'll get that back together. And we're even planning a trip to Paisley Park soon. I'm a big Prince fan, so I'm just throwing it out there. But
me too. So save me a spot on the bus because I'm ready to go. Like I'm all about Prince. Yeah,
I'll keep you posted. But yeah, we do our food drives and we do our clothing drives. But we also are adding a financial literacy piece, component to the things we do. We're teaming up with KeyBank as we speak right now, and we'll be adding a financial literacy component that'll help Black people learn about how to get their credit in order, how money works, how the dollar bill, how you can circulate it better in the Black community, things like that. So we're 2016, about 5 years ago. We're a young organization, but our future is very bright, and I'm proud of where we are right now.
See, we're on the opposite end of that. As you all are a very young organization. We're 123 years old.
We're the big dogs.
And so, you know, I love hearing about, you know, this, you know, new work and new things that people are contributing. And you know, and that's, you know, I've been at Flanner House since 2016. And you know, there was one of our seniors, you know, we have a seniors program in addition to everything else that we do. And one of our seniors, and she has since passed away, her name was Miss Craig. And we had a picture of her when she was 6 years old in a ballet class that was being taught at Flanner House. And I remember, like, when I first got hired, I just did a lot of sitting and a lot of listening. And Miss Craig, you know, I looked at that picture and she started telling me about everything, about how their time was spent at Flanner House and all the different things they would come there for. And she looked at me and she patted me on my knee and she said, "Baby, I remember a time when people used to come here for more than when something was wrong. And if you could do something about that, I'd appreciate it." And I really took that to heart because, yes, you know, we do crisis intervention, we do rental assistance, we do utility assistance, we do workforce training, we do all of those other things. But there had to be more to it than just solely being focused on the struggle, right? That there is this like beauty of being Black, and places needed to exist where we can celebrate our Blackness, or you can walk into a space and know that it's Black owned and that the art on the wall was created by Black folks, that's for sale and available to you, and that the food that you were being served was created by Black people, and the products on the shelves are created by Black makers. That really was this whole driving force for me about how many different ways can we create access points and opportunities, and not that Flanner House has to do it all, that we're happy to host or to convene and create space. You know, so like one of my favorite events, we didn't get to do it last year, with Dominic Dorsey, is the Black Business Block Party that I'm happy to announce that we're bringing it back this year. And you know, when Dominic put the post up, like within, I think 72 hours, we already had 83 Black businesses signed up to participate this year. That folks need to be able to have access points to see who and what is out there and available, so that you can make those intentional plans of where to put your Black dollar. You know, we talk about a Black dollar has to turn over 6 times in a Black neighborhood or a community in order for it to have an impact. Well, my whole point is that, well, then let's create 6 places where it can be. And that's really what the end game is for me, is using this day as a springboard for things and entities and spaces that will remain after, that we can continue to walk into and celebrate and be a part of.
I echo those sentiments. Juneteenth Social, and really the Glow Up Projects, Inc., which is the parent company that runs Juneteenth Social. We're looking to do just that and to mimic what we're doing this summer in the wintertime on the 4th day of Kwanzaa, to bring the City Ujamaa Social that will focus on cooperative economics and will focus on Black business owners, to kind of bring some distinction between our Juneteenth Social program. So I'm very excited for that, and I'm only seeming like I'm going to get about a 2 days sleep before I have to start work on that. But also, as the Glow Up Projects and as the board president of Indiana Pride of Color, the work that we're going to focus on following Juneteenth is the visibility and the quality of life of queer people of color in Indiana, specifically Black queer people. I've been doing the hard footwork of understanding and doing a lot of listening, a lot of researching to understand how queer people of color have existed past my own lived experiences. And it's not a monolith, but it's also not quite where other groups within the Black community exist. So we're doing the heavy work of bringing new life into Indiana Pride of Color. So that looks like some community events. It looks like a lot of partnerships. It looks like a lot of, if we're lucky, we'll do our Indiana Pride of Color Festival this year in September or October. And we hope to, by this time next year, be doing a lot more.
Really quick, congratulations, because is that new with you being board president of IPOC?
It is. It's just new. I think I joined, I want to say October, November of last year. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey, but it's great work.
Awesome.
So,
I'll
I
jump
would
in.
say the work that I'm sorry for jumping in, but
No,
I said the
go
work that I'm looking to do or to continue beyond Juneteenth is just continual advocacy for Indianapolis artists of color, like musicians, performing artists, through mentoring, through booking, because that's a form of advocacy because it empowers mobility, and that's kind of the sticking point as a performing artist here in Indianapolis is economic stability, meaning that most of us have to end up working a day job, to pursue our passions, and that's an access issue, that's an equity issue, and so I exist to eliminate those barriers as much as I can. So a lot of times I work as a independent promoter at venues that typically are owned by white owners, have white owners, and it's usually, with the focus of just uplifting, my people and making sure we're in prime spots, alongside, predominantly white artists that that are booked at these venues. But I ensure that we have accurate representation of the true community, the soul of the city. And so that's really important for me. And I take that responsibility not lightly. On top of that, I'm also involved in developing Indianapolis's first music co-op space. So so I'm heavily involved in that. I don't want to disclose too many details, but it is happening and it will happen soon. And it'll be maintained by those, the pillars of the community and in the form of musicians and also community activists. And it'll just really be a great thing for the community as a whole, and it'll empower. It'll look to empower those musicians and those artists to take their talents to a national level, and also serve the community as well locally.
Awesome.
And
Go
as
ahead,
for us,
Victoria. Thank you. Oh, real quick, Dr. Anike, before you jump in, Victoria had something.
Yeah, just the work outside of the Indy Night Market is Growing Places Indy. We just launched our Grow Getters program, which really focuses on building up the next generation of urban farmers. And so my work is I really want to create the next generation of Black farmers, especially here in Indianapolis and in Indiana as a state. So that is one of the programs we're focusing on. So we have 15 adults in our program. And beyond that, we really want to create land access and be able to provide land to those people in our program. So when they leave our program, they can actually start their own farming business if that's what they choose to do. We also have a youth program that's going to be doing the same thing. So we're really excited. And my work is around food access and food justice. That's really important for me, and making sure that, this industry that we built on our backs, literally with our blood, sweat, and tears, that we actually are able to get back and access that land that we actually own. So that's a lot of the work that I'm working on beyond the night market.
And, since I first came here 20 years ago, I've always tried to bring to those new destinations things that are meaningful to me, like Juneteenth celebration. So at Scott, we've been doing a Juneteenth celebration, celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday, celebrating African Liberation Day, and of course Kwanzaa. And we'll continue to do those things. And one of the things that we've been doing, I want to say almost for, well, I'm sure more than 12 years, is the Generation to Generation Conference, helping to bridge the gap between our people, and hope to create situations where we can share our stories, share our energy and move forward together across the whole of our community. And so that'll be coming up again this coming August 27, 28, 29th. I think those are the right dates. And that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we encourage everybody to come out for that. And we'll also continue to do Soul Liberation Radio. This also this event on Sunday, the Juneteenth celebration, is also the anniversary for Soul Liberation Radio. We will be entering our 6th year. And many folk who know me know that I'm going to leave Indianapolis in 2022 to go to the motherland. And I'm going to be there for at least 4 years, and maybe for the rest of my life, I'm not sure. And I'm hoping that many of these things that we were able to start will continue beyond my leaving here. And so that's my greatest hope.
Well, bon voyage to you in advance. Very safe travels, and I hope that you get everything you're looking for there. Any other last thoughts before we wrap up this conversation? Go ahead.
On Thursday of next week, I will be joined with Sharon Gillians, who is from Galveston. She has roots in Louisiana as well as Texas. And she's a historian and prominent genealogist, and she will bring a presentation. I posted it in Facebook, but it's free, and she's going to talk about the history of Juneteenth and the celebrations and their origins out of Galveston and in Texas. And then I will wrap it up with the impact Juneteenth did or did not have on Indiana. It's free. You just have to register. It's on Zoom, and we call it a history happy hour. So it's a 1-hour program. And then we are going to join James Webb on Saturday. I will be sliding back into town. I'm going to leave on Thursday night and slide back straight to the park from noon to 5 at Riverside. So Indiana Historical Society will have a table, depending on whether we may bring a pop-up exhibit. I'm not sure what. We have to see what we could do. But some components from Indiana Avenue and Madam Walker that we usually have. But please, for those of you who like history, come see us. I was just in the Flanner House collection. We have great pictures. I was just in doing it's lunch with the archivist. Not sure what day it is. Find it on our site, but it's like a 20-minute little piece we're doing. I'm taping it on Monday about MacArthur Conservatory. Great images, great pictures. And as I'm not sure, I think it was Brandon, maybe it was Richard, who said, we're not a monolith, but we're also, everything wasn't downtrodden. We got, I call myself a bougie round the way girl. So, we got a little bit of both and everything in between. And to learn more about Miss Ruth and the conservatory and who played there and who took lessons, and her background was really fascinating. We have a small exhibit actually on our canal level outside the cafe that you can see right now. But you can come and look at lots of the documents, hold them in your hand, and many are digitized and online, like Madam Walker, over 40,000 scans. So I saw Eunice Trotter on there. We collab a lot and put our heads together on how to tell our stories, how to keep them going, how to make us aware of where we've come from to help us with where we're going.
Absolutely.
Can I be real brief, real quick?
Mm-hmm.
On the 11th, you can also log in with the Idle George Museum, and me and brother Anyike will both be speaking about Juneteenth. It's a pleasure to meet you here, my brother. I look forward to that conversation that we'll be having. And all through the week of Juneteenth, Indy Juneteenth has a plethora of events that you can choose from. From Monday, we're having a COVID conversations with Dr. Robert Russell and registered nurse Tiffany Davis, and the IU and students from the IU School of Medicine will be debunking conspiracy theorists about the COVID vaccine. That Tuesday, we'll be having one of our one of our followers' favorite nights is our game night trivia night. So we'll be having Black Entertainment Trivia game night at House of Soul Cafe, another Black-owned business in Carmel. That Wednesday, Chef Christine Preston, who wrote the book Clean Plate, Fresh Slate, she'll be cooking up a traditional Juneteenth meal with, and you'll be able to view that on Facebook Live. Thursday is open mic. Friday is the Miss Indy Juneteenth pageant reunion, and Saturday we'll have the parade and the festival. And I just really want to say I follow all of you guys from a distance, and I'm huge fans of yours, especially you, Brother Cosby and TJ. When we got on, when we started Indy Juneteenth and we got on Instagram, we saw what you guys were doing and just were like, wow, this is so dope. So we don't have to throw a party because they could do it. You know what I mean? So it saved us some time. So yeah, man. Everybody, please keep up the good work. And Brother Floyd, man, y'all go catch that show. That's a bad man. That I saw him at the Idle Joy this weekend. That's a bad brother. Him and Brandon Meeks. Me and Brandon Meeks go back 30 years almost. That's a good guy.
Man, I appreciate you. I appreciate it. And all of you all. I mean, it was just beautiful. I know some of you, but it was great meeting everyone. And I'm gonna, pick your brain, Miss Susan, like on some more info and check out all the offerings. And then Brandon, I'll be in the library really soon, or the Fan House. But yeah, everyone, all of you, I look forward to supporting your missions and collaborating, hopefully on some level.
Awesome. That is what I absolutely love to see and hear, is Black folks working together to make Black folks even better than what we are. So I can't say thank you enough to our guests tonight, James Webb, Richard Sleepy Floyd, Victoria, Susan, Brandon, TJ, and Dr. Anike. Thank you all so much for a great conversation this evening. And I will see all of y'all on Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth. And thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in to What's Good with Ebony Chappelle, a show about people doing good things and things that make us feel good. Have a great day and a positive week, y'all. Peace.